Decadence has been an anime that caused mixed opinions in the community, product of its rather weird presentation which leaves people confused about what this anime is really about. So, some people feel betrayed, ends up disliking the series and dropping it. Others feel that it is really good but is being slept on. Which of these opinions is closer to the truth? Allow me to tell you with this excursion review on Decadence. To start with, I would like to talk about the most meh aspect of the series, its technical section. When I say meh, what I'm trying to say is that there isn't much to talk about in it. For example, the OST. The music in the series is not bad by any means, but also is not memorable nor iconic to the narrative, so I give it a pass, but also can't praise it for it. Following this logic are the designs. They are of the simplistic side, not very detailed, not very complex, so they work well but not exceptional. Although the designs of the equipment they use and some scenarios and buildings are really well accomplished for what the series is going after. All of this, however, cannot be said about the Gaddles, and those other things I'll talk about later. Which you could say are somewhat original, but at the same time ugly, in the sense that they are not cool nor memorable to watch. Plus their CGI animation doesn't help this cause, making them look worse and taking you out of the immersion by watching these CG ugly looking aliens fight the more simplistic but smoother characters. The aforementioned buildings and scenarios are not that aesthetically pleasing, but I give it a pass because this is justified by the setting, which is the next section I want to get at. With the setting at hand, we can talk more about what the true thematic of this anime is. The setting is a post-apocalyptic one, where at first seems like the premise is about humanity lost road to defend themselves in a wasteland planet full of alien monsters named Gaddles, that only wants to kill them. These people live in a giant mobile fortress named Decadence, where they must work to sustain their society which is ever in danger due to the Gaddles. Some people just work within the Decadence with activities like taking care of the food or doing maintenance to the fortress, whilst others go out there to fight the Gaddles, in fear that they may not return home this time. Or is it? Turns out by chapter 2 that this is only half of the truth. The setting is indeed post-apocalyptic. Humanity as we know it perished due to pollution, and the people that survived were the ones that transferred their consciousness in the form of computer data to some cyborg-like beings, and started living in space colonies hovering the desolated planet Earth, while being ruled by an AI called the System, which was intended to manage everything to keep their society in order. In spite of this, they created the Decadence and the Gaddles, which are treated like a video game for the indulgence of the cyborgs, where they log in an avatar and play until they get bored or die in combat, whilst the people that are not players in the Decadence are actual humans that don't know anything about the truth. For them, reality is the first version of the setting. For the cyborgs, reality is the latter one, and all of this is clearly shown by the first two chapters, first in the eyes of an actual human, and then in the eyes of a person made by computer data inhabiting a cyborg. This is the reason why I say the scenarios are justified. The Decadence is an ugly big pile of junk where everything is dry and grey because it has to have that appearance of humanity's last remainings, and the spatial ship is cubic and compacted because this is an image of the art that a computer makes. Certainly an interesting setting, although obviously not unique. There has been some other anime trading with similar settings, and even the idea of transferring one's consciousness to computers is one that is considered possible in the future. Nonetheless, it's good sci-fi, with a setting that can be well used to explore a rich narrative with deep themes. But, does Decadence accomplish that? Let us first begin with everything the anime succeeded at. The aforementioned setting is all in all a plus. It's 100 times more interesting than another scholar mundane or even another generic isekai setting that we are so used to seeing in the current years. It may be not that complex, but it's well used with the characters and the narrative. Now, the overall narrative of the anime is another plus. The justification for the setting is left unexplored, but the series never emphasizes on this, and it is plausible, not something unbelievably stupid that you cannot reason with. The exposition of all of this is unimpressive. It's not badly employed, but could have been better. The anime is short and complete with only 12 chapters, which means the pacing isn't slow, but also isn't that fast at the point that you are unable to digest everything thrown at you. This is why the story feels organic most of the time, without that much convenience or tone whiplash, with a solid beginning and a solid ending to a story full of emotion, high stakes where everything could go to shit with just one misstep of the characters, and a good conflict driven by the characters' resolves about the world they live in. This guides me to talk more in depth about the characters. Our two main protagonists, Natsume and Kaburagi, are the reason of why we will care about the conflict they themselves develop. Natsume is your typical Girl Scout where she wants to help everyone, be friends with all people and be cheery most of the time. Now this is an overall description of her characterization, but isn't all there is to the character. She is the human protagonist of the series, where she lives in the dreadful life fabricated by the cyborgs, that is the Decadence, not knowing anything about the truth. Despite all that, she has a resolve about wanting to be a tanker, which are the people who fight the Garrels, because she wants to improve as a person and protect everyone. Traits that are seen inherited by her late father, who was a tanker too. So, with this in mind, you accompany Natsume in her journey to improve herself, convinced that with a good resolve about trying always at the best of your capabilities, the world around you can change, even in a decadent world like the one she lives in. In this journey, you see multiple phases of the character, where she questions her ideals. You can see her laugh at her highest and cry at her lowest, especially throughout her interaction with the other protagonist, the cyborg part of the anime, Kaburagi. Despite everything I just said about Natsume, her overall simplistic characterization and the fact that she stays almost the same for the whole series, reason why she can be boring or uninteresting at times, exemplifies that she lacks some depth, but Kaburagi is a step above Natsume. The journey you follow with him is different and is where most of the team exploration occurs. Kaburagi is one of these cyborgs that play in the Decadence game to kill Garrels, rank up in leaderboards and self-indulges to escape the boring society he lives in. Or at least that is how it was at first. Later, Kaburagi reveals to be more involved with how the system operates to maintain a correct society. But any of this brings joy anymore to his hollow life, until he meets Natsume and he gradually starts to regain faith in the idea of a better world without the current system and the Decadence. So, with this at hand, you are shown how in reality the decadent world may be the cyborgs one, where they, being life forms of data, without complication in their lives, just self-indulge all day in games and substances that makes them feel good while the system eliminates the so-called bugs of the world, who may be the ones developing free will and conviction, or maybe are just faulty. You see Kaburagi change his will and mindset throughout the series, thanks to the actions of Natsume, and he himself, with his actions, tries to change the world around him for the sake of people like Natsume. He may be stoic in personality, but that goes more in line with the post-apocalyptic setting he lives in, and his backstory. And although stoic, he is not deprived from emotion of his own. I have talked a lot about the protagonist, but what about the rest of the cast? Well, there, unfortunately, is not much to talk about. Minato, Jill, Donatello, Kurenai are one of the very few I can mention, and although they do have a functional characterization, there is not much more to this. Some like Minato and Jill are given a little more of background to work with, while affecting and moving the plot too, but it's too little to accomplish much, or really be memorable. The supporting cast could have been handled in a better way for them to stand out more or at least be more interesting. And with everything that I have been mentioning, you might think to this point that Decadence is close to a masterpiece of anime. Unfortunately, this isn't really the case. Now let me tell you its flaws. First, following what I was saying just a moment ago with the characters, this section isn't perfect because of the last thing I said about Natsume, and because of the supporting cast. Then we have the points I mentioned in the technical section, about how it is unimpressive to ugly, like in the case of the Garrels, and the misstep that was the use of CG. And finally, we have the biggest problem with Decadence, and that despite all, is indeed its weird presentation and tone of the series. The setting is good, but the tone of it and its presentation is too light for the gravity of the situation. I would expect that the cyborgs are from apathic, hedonistic to stoic, depressed beings like Kaburagi, but even in their light mood about the situation in the Decadence makes sense because they all know it's just a video game. But the rest of the humans, although worry about their future, don't seem much different from the cyborgs. I am not taken out of the immersion by one person who isn't like the others, like how Natsume is, but much of the rest are not that different from her, except from having her result. Now, that is not all with the presentation and tone of the series. Then we have the overall design of the cyborgs. What the fuck? For real, it's truly hard to take seriously this story when the characters that drive most of the narrative look like this. Colorful and weird, wacky shaped robots. You may say that is original or creative, but that isn't worth it for what you are losing by employing those kinds of design. Just think how would you feel if a multicolored Wall-E starts talking about overthrowing their oppressive system that rules them and some other deep shit. Wait, isn't that kind of what he actually did? All in all, not the presentation you would expect from a story like this one. I mean, at least it's not really pretentious or over-complex, because it decided to maintain that light tone throughout all the anime, and so didn't overcomplicate the story and its themes. It loses complexity points, but at least it's honest. Worse would be if the cyborgs were all grey and humanoid or something like that, and the tone were to stay cheerful and soft. Also, I must mention that the final conflict of the series felt really forced. The end is alright, but the enemy not only was as simple as it can get, it came out of nowhere. The same applies to the way they defeated that horrible CG abomination. Decadence is a welcome anime in this, well, decadent time for the anime industry. It goes against all that modern anime are about. Zero fanservice, zero edge, zero pretentious crap, zero schools, zero fetishes, etc, etc. A awkward presentation and tone for an overall interesting world. Charming protagonist, a solid story, good animation, except for the CGI, and meaningful themes of escapism, some of human nature, perseverance, improving oneself, questioning authority, sacrifice, will to fight, and the resolve for making a change instead of giving in to a decadent society. All in a complete 12-episode anime original story. 7 out of 10. This is what I call good entertainment, and the anime industry could really learn a thing or two before it completely scorches away.